You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome to our latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Salmons from Coadjute. I won't even pretend to start to be able to tell you what Coadjute is or what it does, because that's the whole point of Dan being here today. He's going to help us to demystify blockchain and tell us how it's going to make the quantum leap in conveyancing. Dan's words, not mine. We'll start by doing some introductions. So, Dan, tell us a little bit about who you are and tell us a bit about your background and how you came into the conveyancing space.
Oh, hi, David. So I'm Dan Salmons. I'm the CEO of Coadjute. I have a background innovating in and around financial services over about 20, 30 years now, actually. I was an innovation director at Barclays and led the rollout of contactless cards in the UK and introduced the first mobile payments phones to the UK. Amongst other things, I've also been a strategy director for banks and most recently innovation director for home buying at NatWest. But actually in between that, I've spent probably most of the last 10 or 15 years leading smaller innovative companies, mostly in and around payments and fintech. The one I'm probably best known for is Pay by Phone, the world's largest parking app. But it was about 3 or 4 years ago, actually, after quite a long period innovating around sort of banking and payments, I was looking across at the mortgage business and at property in general. And it just seemed to me it hadn't gone through the digitization curve that we'd gone through in payments. And I was looking at entrepreneurial opportunities and ended up chatting to NatWest and coming on board there. And whilst I was at NatWest helping to digitize the mortgage process there, I came across a couple of guys who were running a really interesting pilot for the land registry, testing blockchain for them. And they expanded that pilot to involve the market more generally. And it was a very early stage piece of R&D back in 2018. And I got NatWest involved in it, and I was a bit skeptical at the point. I was sort of intrigued, but not expecting it to do anything clever. But it worked beautifully, and we then went ahead and did a more sophisticated pilot in 2019. And by the end of that pilot, I was convinced this was the answer the property market had been looking for years. And as the saying goes, I liked it so much I joined the company, which I joined the founders in early 2020. And the business has been growing very rapidly ever since.
We're going to dive right into exactly what blockchain is and how it works. And you're going to tell us a little bit about Coadjute's journey so far. But from the horse's mouth, Dan, help us to demystify what blockchain is, preferably in words of one syllable.
Yeah, it can seem to be a pretty complex technology, and unlike some of the other major technologies that we come across these days, whether 5G or AI or virtual reality, it can seem a bit intangible. I often say it's less important what blockchain is and how the mathematics of it works than what it does. And what it does is it allows a group of people, a large number of parties who don't trust each other, to be able to share and synchronize data, information, and be absolutely sure that what they're getting from the other parties is accurate, is believable, is verifiable. And historically, the only way to do that would have been to have some party in the middle that everyone trusts. And, you know, the golden example of this, I guess, that we all understand is cryptocurrency, where historically the only way you could rely on, a coin, a value of a currency, would be if there was some sort of bank backing it up. Otherwise, somebody could turn around and say, well, I think you've faked that piece of currency. I wouldn't accept it. And what cryptocurrency did, and with all the challenges and successes of it, has been to take away the need for a central party, and that the mathematics of it allows all those people to trust that it is accurate. Where it gets exciting to my mind, actually, is there are so many applications around the world in different industries where the ability to be absolutely sure of every party's contribution to information without the need for a central hub is incredibly useful. And it's being applied now in everything from international trade to settlement to verifying that a pharmaceutical is genuine, to checking the supply chain of an item of food, anything where, if you think about it, all along the chain, there's lots of different parties contributing information, and you need to be certain that they're all accurate and they're all verified. So that for me is the exciting thing about blockchain is what it enables you to do is to be able to create networks of trust.
I think there's a and forgive me if I'm sort of going out on a limb here. There's a misnomer that blockchain is something that sits in between everything, in the same way that perhaps an app might, as you've alluded to, or something along those lines. This is something that sits really in the background that everybody kind of plugs into. Is that sort of an accurate description?
Yes, it's I think that is a good description. It's a protocol, if you like, which is sometimes a hard word to get your hand on, isn't it? It's a method of sharing data, because what it does is it a bit like a rubber stamp on a document is adding some information to that document to tell you that someone's seen it and verified it. What blockchain does is do that in a way that is immutable, and that means the document can be passed around, if you like, and everybody's stamp is also immutable. So yeah, it's a way of encoding information, and we see this when we turn to the use of it for currency, and no doubt we'll talk about this a bit more. But the idea of traditional money, e-money, the sort that we have in our bank accounts. We don't have a pile of coins in the house or a load of notes under the bed anymore. We have a bank account with digital, with electronic money in it. But that money is not programmable. When I pass it to someone else, any information has been lost on it. It doesn't carry any information, whereas blockchain introduces the possibility of programmable money, where each coin, if you like, can carry information with it, and we can talk a bit more later about the value of that. But yeah, it introduces this new element into information. It allows you to tokenize assets, convert them into a different form with which you can add all sorts of valuable elements. So that's what it does. I think in future, if we go out 10 years, I think it will be just very familiar that lots of the information and networks that we use in our everyday life, such as the label on a food product, that will have been processed and take advantage of blockchain technology. It will be in the background of so much, in the same way that the internet is today. And yet most of us probably don't quite understand how the internet does what it does either. It just does.
And therein is the problem, isn't it? That because we can't touch it, because we can't feel it, I think it's quite difficult to get your head round. And this is very different from the traditional route that software providers have taken, where everybody kind of joins a central hub, and effectively that hub then controls the transaction and ultimately controls the flow of information as well. Talk to me about data management. I mean, does Coadjute hold the data, control the data, see the data? Because understandably, I think companies would be very concerned about that.
Yeah, they would be right too. For us, this is one of the things that Coadjute brings that has never been true before. You're absolutely right. Previous attempts to do this not only have asked people to log on to some kind of new platform, but they've asked them to put the data into their database. And I think in a world of increasing concern, rightly, over data security, that's not right. No, Coadjute has no central database. It's sometimes a little bit hard for people to get their heads around. We are a network. We connect the parties and synchronize data such that each person looking at their own database is seeing the full picture, but they are looking at their own database. And what that means is, if you don't want us to see the data, we don't even need to see it. We just transmit it. So it allows astonishing levels of security. And in the future, one of the things we're excited about is there are certain kinds of data where you might want to share it. So, for example, you may want some market-wide data about how the market's going, and you may be happy to share some information, I don't know, house price or whatever, to contribute towards that. But you want it only to be used for that purpose and not to be used for any other purpose. Well, you can do that with blockchain. You can use secure computing in a way that allows that individual piece of data to be labeled as only usable in a certain way by certain people, and that's unique to blockchain. So yeah, it means we don't need to pool the data in the middle. If you don't want us to, we don't even need to see it. We are a network. We're connecting people to each other, and that is completely and fundamentally different to how it's done before. And I do think it's been a big reason why people are way more comfortable to be taking part in Coadjute than they have been in some of these previous attempts to do this.
So Dan, I think one of the challenges that we have with blockchain is it's just so intangible. Can you give us a flavour of what being connected to Coadjute might look and feel like for a conveyancer in their day-to-day role?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not too different to what they do today. So you get in the morning, you log into your case management system, and you go into a case, and you're working that case. With Coadjute, you'll see an invitation come in, perhaps from an estate agent that's saying, I've got a case here. Would you like to connect over it? And you say yes, and you associate it, you select the matter that it relates to. And when you say yes, those two are now connected. And now when you go into that case, it includes information from the estate agent. The estate agent can see information that you're sharing with them. You can share messages and documents within the case. So you don't leave your existing system. That's the key thing. It's your system has now become a connected system. Each case is only connected to the other parties involved in that case, and only when you accept the invitation. But it transforms what you're looking at, which also means that if not every case is a connected one on Coadjute, that's fine too. You carry on working as you are now, but on those ones, you won't be able to see what the other conveyancer's doing. You may well be called by the estate agent asking where you are or for a document. But that's the advantage, and of course also within that case then are the messaging and so on. So when you open it, you can see the discussion that's been going on. You can see what the requests are inside it, as opposed to having to turn to your email and check a reference number and upload and download documents. So yeah, it's the experience is that it takes place within your existing system, and I think that's why Coadjute is receiving such widespread support. To be honest, it is just very easy to use. It's a logical extension of what you do today.
I think the other important thing, again, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, is that whereas historically a lot of things that have come, particularly into the property market, have required everybody to be doing it in the same way. Am I right in thinking that blockchain doesn't sort of mandate some of that requirement to sort of everybody plugs into something in the same way? If I'm making sort of sense of this.
I don't think that's an inherent property of blockchain. I actually think that's the approach that we're taking at Coadjute, actually, to bringing it to the market. I was involved in the rollout of contactless cards many years ago, and one of the key decisions was not to make contactless a separate card, because if it did, you created this separate world where you either had it or you didn't. And what we wanted was that as more and more people use it, it's just a facility that's available to them that they can use or not on their regular card. And that's certainly the approach we're taking at Coadjute. We believe that it needs to be really simple and really available for people to make use of it, but it absolutely can't be something where people have to go to a big effort and do everything differently. And I think, interestingly enough, our approach is being watched with great interest, actually, across the blockchain world, because traditionally blockchain hasn't been introduced like that. It's generally been introduced in a different way, which requires a much more different process. So yeah, we're sort of innovating even within the world of blockchain with Coadjute.
we're talking a week after you guys were at a conference announcing a sort of a new development around a mortgage stable coin. I can't profess again to know a huge amount about this and understand it a huge amount, but this is a blockchain technology that is going to support the mortgage process. Tell us a bit about that, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really exciting development, and it does merit taking apart, because for those of you who don't go to blockchain conferences who are listening, it can sound pretty opaque, but actually it's something that all of us can and should understand. So I guess the starting point for our thinking here, Coadjute is introducing a blockchain across the whole property end-to-end process, making it easy for people to share and synchronize information across the market. I mean, our insight is really that, unlike other major markets in financial services or with stock exchanges or Visa or Swift, where there are these market infrastructures that the market takes for granted, it's easy for everyone to connect and deal with each other securely in a standard way. It doesn't exist in property. We've got all these different professions trying to work together, and they don't have an infrastructure. What they have to rely on is phone and email and ad hoc connections. So what Coadjute is doing is bringing that connection to the market and putting it behind existing systems. That's a really important point. You don't need to log on to something special to use Coadjute. You use your existing case management system. Coadjute's built into it, which means that you can see and share information securely without having to drop out to email or pick up the phone or whatever. It can all be done from within your existing system. So that's what we're trying to do. But we looked across at the completion process, and it hasn't been innovated in for decades. People are pushing money around using CHAPS payments. Sort codes and account numbers are shared over email and phone. Everyone's doing a ton of reconciliation. And worst of all, it all has to happen in this very compressed time frame, right up against the moment when the poor house buyer is trying to move, and they're sitting there literally sometimes waiting in the removals van to hear from the estate agent who's waiting to hear from the conveyancer. It's really a hugely inefficient process. And so what we're introducing, and we're going to be piloting this, so that's what we were announcing, is we're going to be working with a group of banks and software players later this year to test this. Is what we're enabling is, instead of that process to take place with everyone actually moving the money at the last minute, it can take place earlier on with people moving stable coins. So let me just pause to explain what a stable coin is. So a stable coin is a token, actually. In fact, most blockchain involves is a token. In other words, a representation of something real. So if you go to an amusement park, you might get given a token for a ride, mightn't you? And that represents the money you've paid. Now, with a cryptocurrency, those tokens are tradable, aren't they? People trade bitcoins, and the value of them goes up and down in the same way. Perhaps in an amusement park, you might trade your blue token for somebody else who wants to, really desperate for that ride, and they'll pay you more for it, and the value goes up and down. But the trouble with the cryptocurrency, of course, is because it's unhinged, as it were. It goes up and down like a yo-yo. It's a really unreliable currency in terms of being certain what the value is. It also does something which is really unhelpful for home moving cryptocurrency, which is that it hides where it came from. The blockchain is used to protect the identity of the user, so you've no idea, which from a money laundering or KYC point of view is useless. So when I hear of people using Bitcoin for mortgages, it seems to be a very strange thing to do. It's really completely inappropriate use. I was saying to somebody the other day, you can build a sofa out of muffins. It doesn't mean it's a good idea. But what we're using is something called a stable coin, and that is, imagine a red token, as it were, that you might use at an amusement park. It has written on it £5 that you've paid for it. It's pegged to the pound, and that's why it's called a stable coin. It doesn't float on its own value. And the reason we like it for the completion process is that can also be programmed. In other words, that piece of token, that piece of money, can be programmed to say it can only be used for this property transaction. It carries information. It can be used to be absolutely certain who it came from, where it went to. And so the process that we're introducing is going to take the money that is pledged for a mortgage, or is requested for a mortgage, or is put down as a deposit, convert it into stable coins, in a very simple way on their screens, the conveyancers can move the stable coins around. And when everybody is happy that everybody has the right amount, it can be locked and approved and programmed to then complete 24/7, 365. It can be in a Saturday afternoon because all the work has been done. It's all been verified. It's all been approved. Everybody's agreed it. And then when the moment happens, the money itself exchanges. But up till then, what's being exchanged is stable coins. And that gives you this wonderful security because it's all on the blockchain. It's not being moved around in the open, like sort codes, and it's programmable money. So it's labeled, it can only be used for this property transaction, and it can be done in advance with absolute security. So I think it'll be, genuinely a revolution in the way completion works. And I think it doesn't change the role of the conveyancer. To move the money, to be sure that it's right, to approve it. But it does make that much easier because it's not happening at the last minute when everyone's trying to move. I hope that makes sense.
I think I probably, like an awful lot of people, Dan, get very hung up on ultimately how that money then goes, how the stable coin then goes from being stable coin converted back into currency, because at some point in time money has to transact from one account to another, and you've probably sort of tried to explain that within what you've said, and I've not quite picked it up. But how do we go from this scenario where the stable coin is transacted and it's scheduled and done? How do we go from that and then reconvert that stable coin back into pound currency securely?
Yeah, no, and I didn't fully explain that, so it's worth adding that. In order to move the stable coins around, you need to be a user on the blockchain, and everybody on Coadjute is a verified person. That's a really important part of what we're doing at Coadjute. It is a trust network, so every individual is verified as to who they are, and they're labeled, they're clear on the blockchain. Anyone dealing with them knows that it's them. And what that means is they can also associate a bank account with themselves, and that's locked and loaded. It's part of who they are on the network. And that means that once the stable coins have moved and it's time now to move the money isn't moving between an infinite number of random bank accounts as it is in the open world. It can only move to, in your case, David Opie's account. And you verified that it's your account, it's moving to your account. So it does need to convert back to the real world, but when it does so with the verified security that it could only do one way. And that's why I call it programmable money. What the blockchain brings is a requirement that it can't be just moved wherever you like. This money can only be used for this house purchase, and it can only convert into David's account when it's ready. So, you have to set the approval in the program so that it can do that. And the thing with blockchain is it incorporates it built into it. And I'm talking generally about blockchain, but I should probably be more specific. The blockchain that we use at Coadjute is R3's Corda enterprise blockchain. And the reason we use that, it is the leading choice of blockchain for large international banks. So, for example, something like 91% of Italy's banks all do their settlement over R3 Corda's enterprise blockchain. It's used for international trade. It's designed for ultra high security of movement of billions of dollars of payment. And we use that because it means we are moving data and identity and money with the highest possible level of security. So it has built into it everything that those kind of very high value transactions require to make sure that it cannot be waylaid on the way. It cannot. It's fully encrypted at source on the journey. It's encrypted at the other end. It's programmed as to who can use with. And in my mind, when I compare that technology with what we're using today, sort codes and account numbers being sent over email. When we talk quantum leap at the beginning, David, it's that's the quantum leap. I think we will look back and go, I cannot believe we were relying on something as insecure as a sort code and account number push payment and email. And I should think many of your listeners either have had or know of situations where there's been a fraud where it's been easy because a fraudster can just hop into the email and redirect the sort code and account number. It's just absolutely a different level of security with blockchain.
Sadly commonplace in conveyancing, isn't it? And lots of examples of it happening, which leads me to if we just maybe take a step back to the start of the blockchain process. You've talked about how the data gets encrypted. You've talked about how it's attached to an individual. Somewhere along the line, you have to have completed verification on that individual in order to insert them into the blockchain. That process, how does that process work? What sort of information are you using to verify that information?
Yeah, so there's a general philosophy actually at Coadjute, which is we don't believe in disruptive technology, which may come as a bit of a surprise to listeners who go, well, you're a blockchain player. I've never been a fan of disruptive technology because I think it doesn't drive adoption. I think people don't want to be disrupted. They want to be supported. So our general philosophy in Coadjute is we follow existing procedures wherever we can. So, we would want the person to be verified using the standards of verification that you'd expect today, that a conveyancer would go through today. Now, I think there's lots of opportunity to improve that with digital identity and other forms of verification. And I think that will be much easier on Coadjute than it is today. But the verification is no different. We use the same individual verification. The difference is that it's locked in and it cannot be varied after that. That once you've identified yourself on the blockchain and you are an identified individual, you're locked. It's not possible for somebody else to, if you like, steal that identity. Now, is there a risk there that a conveyancer verifies, if you like, the wrong person? That's one that we've got to do more work as an industry to get out. There's a limit to what you can do, but it certainly avoids any of the risk thereafter. If you verified the right person, they are verified. That's it. They won't be changed.
And in fairness, Dan, you've alluded there to, I think, some of the thinking that some of the listeners might have, which is, look, we've still got to go through this process of verifying
Absolutely.
the individual. And interesting that we wholeheartedly accept that there are improvements happening or that need to happen with that. And in fairness, there is a lot of work going on around that at the moment.
There is, just touch on that, David. Actually, digital identity is a really interesting one for us because I think there are 35 digital identity providers in the UK at the moment. No one's going to connect to all of them, and that's been a big barrier to the industry. And one of the things we're working on at the moment with various bodies actually in the industry is a trust framework, so that actually any of those digital identity can connect to Coadjute and anyone can use them. And I think that could be the barrier, that if we can take that away, then the opportunity for digital identity, it just becomes a million times more easy to use. So I think that's one to watch for the future. I think that's where Coadjute can contribute actually to not doing the identity ourselves, but making it a lot easier for people to get an identity and to check it.
Before we've done the recording here today, we were chatting about the Conveyancing Association conference, which I recently attended, at which the insurers were suggesting that 2021 had seen about a 15% increase in conveyancing professional indemnity premiums in the first round of renewals earlier this year. And the October renewals were seeing somewhere around a 15 to 20% increase as well. Presumably, you kind of see that all of this risk mitigation and risk management that blockchain provides could potentially, and we won't hold you to this, but could potentially see PII premiums reviewed.
I think so, and we've begun to have some conversations to try and establish that. I think there's the opportunity here to tackle those premiums, and it makes sense really. At the moment, the difficulty is people who are really diligent with their processes and very thorough and very cautious. I think it's very hard for the insurers to separate them from people who are perhaps less so in the industry, and that raises everyone's premiums. By using a blockchain infrastructure like Coadjute, what that means is those people who are using it are not using things like email. It's clear when you send a message from one conveyancer to another over Coadjute, it's going directly from one verified person in their CMS inside it to the other verified person in their CMS. It's not being converted to anything. It's not going through an insecure medium on the way. And that's therefore quite profound, I think, in terms of giving the insurers absolute confidence that they are simply using a different mechanism that is far more secure. So yeah, I think as an industry, I think widespread use of a more secure infrastructure. I mean, imagine if the stock exchange or, the Visa cards, all those payments went over, email and post. Of course, there'd be a ton of fraud. And if somebody then said, let's introduce a formal stock exchange or a formal Visa system, you would cut it. So I think the arrival of an infrastructure in this market that is a secure infrastructure, those people who use it can absolutely demonstrate their risk is lower and their premiums should be. So yeah, we're going to do all we can as we roll out the system to work with the insurers and brokers to make those products available so that people who are using Coadjute can benefit from the fact that they are genuinely reducing the risk.
And I guess the $1 million question then is, when do you anticipate that this is going to be available? When can conveyancers really start to see the benefit of blockchain in their daily lives?
Well, the truth is today. So we are live. We are the industrial platform has been launched. We're doing testing with our first customers. We're putting on board some quite large systems, some large software players in both the estate agency market and the conveyancing market, and we're taking a handful of customers from each. We're doing a lot of proving, mostly to make sure that it feels really easy and slick, and that things that people expect to be there are there. So that's we want to make sure that by the time we get to the rollout, it's working really beautifully. So yeah, we're doing that testing in the last part of this year, and then we'll start really quite a rapid rollout next year. But yeah, there are people as we speak here, David, there are estate agents and conveyancers working with each other over the Coadjute blockchain. It's extraordinary. I think that that this is available now. But yes, it should be a relatively rapid rollout. And what I'm encouraging people to do is, if they're interested and they want to see it, is drop their case management system provider a line and say, this is something I'm interested in. Most of them will already be talking to Coadjute, but it's obviously it puts it higher up their agenda if as many are, they're getting requests from people that they want to see it.
Well, look, that's brilliant, Dan. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic to talk to you. I think we've made a start on demystifying blockchain, albeit that there's still work to be done. But thank you so much for your time and for your input.
Lovely. Thank you, David. Thanks for your time, and thanks to everyone for listening too.